Hey there everyone, and welcome to this impressions/feedback video about Prodeus Closed Beta. Now if you don't know what Prodeus is, it's an upcoming retro shooter from Bounding Box Software. It's a team of 2 developers working on this, but they also get some external help from people like Dragonfly, whom you might recognize as the project lead for Eternity Megawatt for Doom 2. They also have Jimmy/James Paddock doing the alternative soundtrack for this game. Which is cool because the main soundtrack is made by, well, you know, that guy that does all the soundtracks for games like this nowadays. So I don't even need to say his name. Anyway, Prodeus has a pretty cool graphic style which is kind of reminiscent of Amityville in the sense that it has low-res, pixelated, unfiltered textures, but they still use all the modern effects such as reflections. And I like that style. It worked really well in Amityville and it works really well in Prodeus as well. Also, there's another interesting thing about the visuals of this game, namely that all the objects, like, you know, enemies and pickups and weapons, I think, all of those are 3D objects, but they use some kind of a filter or post effect or something to make them look like sprites. So depending on where you stand, how you look at them, it simulates all the different angles and stuff. It actually looks pretty cool. I've actually been looking forward to this game for quite some time because I've heard about it literally before it was announced. I've seen some pictures and videos posted by the developers on their Twitter accounts. That's where I heard about it. So I was pretty excited when I got a chance to play this early beta. Anyway, so the reason I'm making this video is, number one, to give some proper feedback, impressions to the developers themselves, and number two, for all the people who might have not heard about this game, or maybe you've heard about it and you've already seen everything there is to see about this game, but you want to see more. So yeah, you've got one more video to watch. Now I know that the developers are pretty much flooded at this point by all sorts of feedback from all sorts of people on Steam and in other places as well, so I don't think there's a big chance they're gonna watch this, but hey, it just feels right to do it. If I got into beta, it feels appropriate to share my thoughts on it. So I'm not gonna waste your time, I'm just gonna as quickly as I can, go through the notes that I took while playing. And then the second part of the video is gonna be just a playthrough of the level included in the beta. So you can see how it looks, how it feels, how it sounds without me talking over it. So let's start with the options menu. There's nothing really anything significant missing here. You got all your regular options. You can change the field of view, which is nice. You can also turn off this fancy helmet style HUD and use the simplified version of that, which is also scalable, so you can just adjust it however you want. One thing I'd like to see though is some option to simplify the crosshair, because we've got all those big fancy crosshairs for every weapon, but it would be nice to just have a dot for people who do not want to have their screen cluttered like that. Now, some of the core things you need to get right in a first-person shooter is, first, how does it feel to move around the world, and 2, how does it feel to fire the guns? So as far as just moving around the levels, it feels pretty good, it feels responsive, I don't really have any complaints here. Though I do recommend toggling the sprint on, because there's no stamina bar. You can just run around, you can sprint as much as you want, so there's no reason to walk around unless you just want to slowly appreciate every nook and cranny of the levels. I do have some slight nitpicks about jumping though. You know, I don't really know why is it so hard for people to just get jumping right in the first-person shooter. It always feels kind of strange, kind of floaty. And as far as I'm concerned, the best jumping was in Duke Nukem 3D, and it felt really sharp and impactful. It felt like you were an actual human being, a nimble human being jumping up and down. But in Prodeus, it's not the worst jumping I've ever seen, by far. It feels pretty decent, but I do think it should be maybe a little bit faster. Maybe you should spend a bit less time in the air. Because as of right now, I feel like it's a little bit too floaty for my taste, like you're gliding in the air for way too long, and I think the game would benefit from tweaking it just a little tiny bit. Also, I think it would be nice to have a little bit more air control in this game, because I don't know how much jumping, puzzles, how much platforming you're gonna have in the full game, But as of right now, it feels like when you're jumping on top of a platform, there's very little you can do to kind of readjust yourself mid-air. And you can stop yourself completely, but as far as just wiggling around left and right, it would be nice to be able to do that, just to make platforming a little bit more fun and a little bit more convenient. And PS, if there's not at least one significant platforming session in your game, then I'm gonna be severely disappointed. Now let's talk about weapons. The pistol feels nice, it's no real complaints here. Maybe there should be a little bit less screen shake when you fire it, because it just kind of makes it seem like it's more powerful than it actually is. The shotgun, I'm not too crazy about how it looks, but it feels pretty satisfying to use, though maybe it should be a bit more powerful. I think I've seen some comments on the forums that people also think that it should be just a bit stronger, so it's easier to maybe one-shot the weaker enemies without going for a headshot. Though I do appreciate that the shotgun is pretty effective at medium range as well, not just at short range, so it doesn't end up being a melee weapon. The machine guns, or the shredders as they're called in the game, are really cool. They look nice, they sound nice, they're very satisfying to use, so no complaints here. I will, however, complain about the rocket launcher, because while it looks pretty awesome, it's really weak for what it should be. It doesn't seem to be doing a whole lot of damage, and overall it just feels kind of underwhelming. You know, in general, explosions in Prodeus feel kind of weak. You're gonna see in the demo how I gather a couple of zombies around the barrel, then blow it up, and I think no one really dies from that explosion, even though visually it looks gigantic. We also have a chain gun, or more accurately a Gatling gun, and this is one of my favorite weapons in the game so far. It's really everything that a Gatling gun should be. It feels heavy, it deals a lot of damage, and it's nice that you actually can't run around when you use it. Finally, there's an arc rail, which is kind of a mix between a chain lightning weapon and a railgun. I kind of like it. The first fire mode is useful for crowd control, and the precision shot is good for dealing a whole lot of damage to a single enemy. And railguns in general are always amazing. Though I will mention that I did find the sound of the railgun to be kind of lacking. It doesn't really feel very powerful. But other than that, it's a really cool weapon. Overall, weapons and the combat in general feels really nice, though I do have mixed feelings about the whole weapon reloading thing. Honestly, after Doom 4, I feel like games like this, like arcade retro shooters, really should not have weapon reloading at all, because it just detracts from the action. But hey, at least the reloading animations and sounds are pretty cool, so it doesn't annoy me as much as I thought it would. There's really just one level in the beta, because the first one is an introduction and the third one is just a shotgun trial, so there's one actual level. And it's a pretty good one. I like the layout, it seems very competently designed. It's a pretty standard idea where we need to find two keys, we have two routes for them, so we can just tackle them in any order we like. And it's nice, it's simple, it's easy to understand, and it gives the player a little bit of choice. I hope that this is gonna continue in the full game and that we're gonna get levels with a lot of exploration and interconnectivity. And, you know, not just completely linear roller coaster rides. However, I will say that I do hope that we're gonna get a bit more types of surfaces in the full game. Because in this level, basically everything is made of metal. There's a little bit of glass, a little bit of rock, but mostly it's just metal everywhere. It could use some structures made of stone or concrete or plastic or wood even, because at times it does feel like I'm just seeing the same three textures over and over again. But it is just a single level, so maybe I'm nitpicking too much. Some other random things that I've noticed. When I launched the game for the first time, I thought there was something wrong with the FOV, and I tried increasing it, but it didn't really help, it just distorted the image. It took me a while, but I think I figured out what was bothering me about it. And it's this dark shadow at the edges of the screen. Now, I'm not sure what it's supposed to be. Maybe it's part of the main HUD and it's supposed to simulate like you're wearing a helmet or something. But I really see no reason for this. I think it should be completely removed, or at least there should be an option to turn it off. It just somehow makes the screen feel more narrow than it actually is. Now, another thing, and I know there are a lot of people who complain about this on the forums, is the gore. I think there are two main problems with it. The first one is that there's just too much blood in the game, and I'm not saying that the game is too violent, there's just too much red liquid on the screen all the time. I mean, you shoot an enemy with a pistol and blood just sprays all over the place. The same goes for dismemberment, because it constantly feels like enemies are made of Lego or something. You just breathe on them heavily and they just fall apart. And I think this should be toned down to add a little bit more realism to the situation. I would make it impossible to dismember enemies with fists or a pistol. Now with shotgun you should be able to blow off limbs, but I think that as far as full body dismemberment goes, there should be just a very slight chance of that happening with that gun. I think they actually did something like that in Fear 2, that there was a very small chance that a shotgun blast would completely destroy an enemy. Then, you know, the Gatling gun should cut enemies in half, rocket launcher should blow them apart completely, stuff like that. And the reason for this is that gore in first-person shooters is essentially a reward for either doing a headshot or using a strong weapon. So a fountain of blood coming out of the enemy when you do a headshot, it's not realistic, but because it only happens when you do a headshot, it actually makes the headshot itself a lot more satisfying. And the same goes for dismemberment. It's like that Fear 2 example. It's like if shotgun would always destroy an enemy completely, now that wouldn't feel special. And when you shoot an enemy with a pistol and he just gets ripped apart into two halves, that just feels weird. I mean, even in the old games like Doom and Duke Nukem and Quake, enemies were not just jibbing completely when you shoot them with a pistol, right? So personally I would look into making the dismemberment a bit less common and thus making it more special. And while we're on that subject, I would also like to complain about disappearing corpses. I mean, I could understand it in a modern game where characters are made of like millions of polygons, but here? It's really disappointing. I wish there was at least an option to make all the corpses and jibs and everything just stay permanently. Well, at least blood is persistent as far as I can say. That's something. On another random note, I do appreciate how the ammo pickups work in this game. In a situation where your backpack is full but the gun is almost empty, the game will still pick up the ammunition so that you don't have to reload the gun before you can pick up the ammo. Now this is really nice. It shows that the developers are paying attention to small details like that. Another random detail, I like it that the guys with shotguns have a bit of a delay before they actually shoot you. I always appreciate it when developers do things to make fighting hit-scan enemies a bit more manageable, so props for that. However, I do not appreciate that when you kill a guy, the gun just floats like it's a balloon, like it doesn't weigh anything. I mean, it's a shotgun, not a flower, so I would definitely change that. What else? The enemy placement is kinda neat. I like it that there's a variety of monsters, even though they're pretty much just copies of monsters from Doom. However, it would be nice if less monsters were actually teleporting in and more of them were just in a level already. I don't really see the reason why like individual zombies have to be warping into the level. It makes no sense to me. The automap is really nice, and I really like that there is this overworld between the levels. I'm not sure if in the full game we're gonna be able to actually choose like the path where we go, to which level we go first and stuff like that, but either way, this is a nice touch. I also have to say that I don't really like the music. Like, no offense to Andrew, but metal just does not fit as a soundtrack for me ever. And I know that he can do other things, because, I mean, the soundtrack for Amid Evil was amazing, and I think he's also doing music for Wrath. And it's also very nice, so I would appreciate something more atmospheric, but, well, who am I to judge the creative vision here? Oh yeah, there's also a level editor, the famous editor that is supposedly super functional, but unfortunately I didn't have time to dig into it. But I think they will have some kind of support for sharing maps, so I think that might be a big deal eventually. But yeah, overall it looks really good. I had a lot of fun playing it so far. I'll be checking out the early access version as soon as that becomes available, and well, keep up the amazing work.
Thingies.